Hello again. In Manfred Brauch, Hard Sayings of Paul, here he's discussing the mysterious saying of 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 7 about the man or the restrainer who holds back lawlessness, the one restraining. That text reads, "For the secret power of lawlessness is already at work, but the one who now holds it back will continue to do so till he is taken out of the way." The figure of one who holds back lawlessness appears in a text where Paul speaks about events and experiences which precede and accompany the second coming of Christ. One event is the appearance of the man of lawlessness, according to 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 3. A final personal incarnation of evil who will be overthrown by the breath of the Lord Jesus at his coming, according to 2:8. That event is still to come, contends Paul. Yet the reality and power of lawlessness is already present, though not as obviously as it will be when it reaches its climax in the man of lawlessness. The context of this passage shows that lawlessness is to be understood as opposition to God, as everything which violates the purposes of God for the creation. Lawlessness is at work wherever human beings refuse to love the truth and delight in wickedness. Those are direct references to 2 Thessalonians 2:10 and 2:12. This lawlessness is a present reality, but it is being restrained, held in check by a figure whom Paul vaguely refers to as one who now holds it back. Who is this? As pointed out in chapter 42 with respect to the man of lawlessness, so with this enigmatic restrainer. Paul assumes that the Thessalonian believers are aware of whom he speaks. During my visit with you, he reminds them, I used to tell you these things, according to 2:5. But since we were not there, Paul's veiled reference leaves us groping for that figure's identity. In that task, we are not alone. As early as the 5th century, the church father Augustine admitted that the meaning of our hard saying completely escaped him. And as eminent an exegete as F.F. Bruce is sure, with Augustine, that the best we can do is guess at its meaning. Such guessing, however, is not totally subjective, for we have enough of Paul's view of things from his extensive writings to provide at least some clues. In the history of this text's interpretation, 2 interpretations of the restrainer of lawlessness have commended themselves as most probable. One view sees in this enigmatic figure a reference to the power of the Roman Empire, represented in the person of the emperor. The state exists, Paul held, for the purpose of restraining wickedness. And that is, of course, derived from Romans 13, 1-5. In the execution of this purpose, the state is an instrument in the hands of God. When it violates that mandate, promoting evil and suppressing the good, it is demonic and the instrument of Satan. And he references here Revelation 13, the beast. At the time of his missionary work in Macedonia, not long before he wrote his epistles to Thessalonica, Paul had experienced the protecting benefits of Roman citizenship. Later, the progress of the gospel in Corinth was shielded from the power of lawlessness by a Roman magistrate. That's in Acts 16 and Acts 18. And Paul's life was saved from certain death at the hands of an angry mob, and for several more years of missionary work by Roman authorities in Palestine. And that's in Acts 22 and 23. These experiences of the apostle no doubt confirm the conviction that, within the sovereign purposes of God, the Roman state, with its laws and extensive power, acted as a restraint against a full manifestation of the powers of lawlessness and evil. He knew that this restraining power would not last forever. Caesar would one day be taken out of the way, but that day was not yet. A second interpretation of the restraining power and the restrainer takes its clues from another very important dimension of Paul's teaching. In the epistle to the Christians in Rome, written several years after the Thessalonian correspondence, and from the same city, Corinth, Paul shares his belief that the proclamation of the gospel to the Gentiles was God's plan, and that its rejection by the Jews was temporary. That belief is in keeping with Jesus' words that the gospel would be preached to all nations before the end would come. Within this understanding, the proclamation of the good news and its operation in the lives of believers would act as a restraint against evil in the world. Paul, as the apostle to the Gentiles, would be the one who holds evil back by his evangelistic ministry. Both of these interpretations are possible within Paul's overall thought. Two considerations make the latter one somewhat less probable. First, since Paul speaks quite clearly about his Gentile mission and purposes elsewhere, the somewhat oblique reference to the something and someone who holds back evil in the present is difficult to understand. On the other hand, his reticence to name this reality explicitly, if Paul has Rome in mind, makes sense. For to say openly that Rome would be taken out of the way could cause unnecessary difficulty. Secondly, it is clear that the one who removes the restraining reality is God. But would Paul speak about his missionary work and the proclamation of the gospel, which he saw as mandated by the Lord, as being taken out of the way by God? It is thus more probable that the one who holds back lawlessness is a reference to the state, in the first instance Rome, but in a larger sense all civil authority, which, when properly fulfilling its mandate, acts as a restraint against anarchy. So I'll put in a link to the previous discussion of the man of lawlessness, along with a reference which was the link in the previous video, which is the Watchtower's theology as a house of cards, based upon their discussion of Daniel chapter 11 and 12.
3.